New patch is absolutely insane. Everything here, buffs. Not a single nerf. Everything for every class is getting strong. First, the general updates. Healing potions, heal more. Cool. Then the aspect of the protector is reduced from 30 to 20 seconds. Protector is the one that gives you a barrier when you're damaging an elite. So it's a 10-second uptime, 10-second cooldown, 10-second uptime. Then ancestral unique items are getting buffed, and we're talking about the uber uniques. In Dariel's Visage, the Poison Nova now spawns on the enemy instead of on you when you Poison Nova someone, and the damage is increased by 50%. Doombringer's Shadow Explosion increased the damage by 100%, which is kinda nice. And the most important part, the Ring of Starless Skies, now stacks 5 times instead of 4 times, and does a 50% damage boost and a 50% resource cost reduction. The ring was already incredibly good, and now got even stronger. Curials might get a buff by 100% damage, which is insane. The only problem is you need to be full health to actually trigger it. And now my favorite change, and that one is incredible beyond belief. Stat requirements for non-main stats reduced from 90 to 60 per Paragon Board. What does this mean for your character? I got my Necro here, for example, and we're beginning with 170 dex and 160 willpower to activate the respective nodes. Then the next board is already up to 260 willpower and 270 dex, which goes over to the next board with 360 and 350. You notice it's like 90 or roughly 100, sometimes 110 higher. That one is lower now, because now for the next board, for the 4th board in total, I already need 440 willpower to activate this, and I can't put many points into dex or even intelligence to boost my all damage / resistances. And the same goes here. It's another 450 willpower. It's another, actually 450 dex because I'm not wearing my Harlequin crest right now. Harder to activate by any means. Now that will be easier than ever. Back here, this one with 880 int, easy because I have 880 int. But if I wanted to activate 620 willpower, you could completely forget about this. Now, Necromancer doesn't need many rare nodes, but for the other classes, this one will matter so goddamn much. Now buffs to the Barbarian, and heads up, Bash did not get nerfed. Whirlwind does more damage, Violent Whirlwind does more damage. It's only like a 5% increase. Do you want this or don't you want this, right? Frenzy got a damage increase by 8%. Flay is even more efficient than ever before, especially increasing the vulnerable duration that you perma vulnerable easily. And interestingly enough, Pressure Point, which used to give you a chance for vulnerable with your core skills, is now a chance for vulnerable with core and weapon mastery skills. That gives Barbarian a very nice source of continuous vulnerable. Oh, and you get even more thorns. Thorns are fantastic. In the legendary aspect department, our Dust Devil Whirlwind players are going to be happy because that damage gets boosted up by 100%, essentially doubling your damage as it then multiplies up and goes crazy. Love to see that. And to boost Whirlwind even more, Gore's Devastating Grips get updated. I know they haven't been the main focus anymore since they got super nerfed in Season 1, but maybe we can see a return of Gore's because 35% to 50% is significant. The crazy part, though, are the Druid Buffs. All in all your Spirit boons got buffed. Maximum Spirit up to 40 instead of 20. Thorns now 100%. Advantageous Beast reduced the duration of control impairing effects. Useless, but now you get 15% movement speed on top. Your critical strikes go up by 10% instead of 5%. Maximum life is 20% boost. Yes, my Druid was already having tons of life. We're talking about 65,000 easily without good gear. Now I'm getting another 6% max life boost just like that. Bonus attack speed, more spirit restored on lucky hit, and very interesting Obsidian Slam. Now you only need to kill 10 opponents to get a free overpower instead of 20. And that goes very well with Rabies buff. That's nice to have. But Pulverize, the base damage of Pulverize is increased by 76%. Not the overpower, nothing with overpower, just the base damage. And mostly with Pulverize, you're going to be critting instead of overpowering. That's increased by 76%. Amazing. Plus, Raging Pulverize. That used to be enemies overpowered by Pulverize are stunned. That one was kind of sad. But now, Pulverize deals 30% increased overpowered damage. Another 30x overpowered, just like that. So base damage increased, 30% overpower damage increased, plus another 6% max life to boost overpower even more. And we haven't even started. Nature's Fury, Perfect Storm, Nature's Fury, Toxic Claw, Quick Shift, Defensive Posture, all are getting buffed throughout the board, and they're partially significant. Damage to distant enemies increased from 369 to 51015. That's a 6% multiplicative damage buff. That's a lot. Perfect Storm is getting another 10%. Quick Shift is going up to from 18 max to 24. These are not minimal tiny buffs. They're going wide up. And get this, time in wearer form required for an overpower goes from 24/20/16 down to 12 seconds. Even more overpower for Druid coming left, right, and center. The aspect buffs are minimal, but landslide damage increased from 80% to 100% of normal damage. That's kind of nice to see. And your werewolf companions are dealing even more damage now if you're then interested to run the werewolf companion build. Oh, and the dominate glyph, which does overpower, right, is now 15% instead of 12%. We're truly trying to push an overpower narrative here, and I'll definitely be revisiting this as soon as the patch hits to go over it again. Now to the Necromancer, and for some reason they decided we need to buff the sacrifices. So if you actually sacrifice your minions. Now we're going from a 5% to a 10% crit. Not so interesting. 20 to 25% resistance bonus for sacrificing your warriors. Also not so good. Then the Reaper sacrifice is now 20% shadow damage boost. That's insane. Usually you sacrifice your Skeletal Reapers and that's only 15. And the Shadow Blight Necro is now stronger than ever. Interestingly enough though, if you sacrifice your Shadow Mages, your maximum essence is now 20 plus. That is for the Bone Spirit gameplay, and your essence generation is increased by 20%. They really want you to play this super Bone Spirit board. Now, this is not all of it though, because you could also just sacrifice your Bone Mages for a 30% increase of your overpower damage. With 25%, that was already intense. 30% is even crazier. And don't forget that in your skills, you can already boost your sacrifices by 60% if you sacrifice warriors and mages. So every boost you're getting is a double boost because Memento Mori is boosting it even further. And they tinkered with one aspect. Let's finish the sacrifices though first. If you actually get rid of your golem now, you're getting 15% attack speed, 15% more life, multiplicative, yes, or critical strike up to 35%. That one used to be actually 50 if I'm not completely mistaken. So we're going more towards that. Now in the Paragon board, something incredible changed for Necro though, and that's Blood Begets goes up to 30% multiplicative. And Blood Begets is the Paragon node. If you pick up a Blood Orb, you get 5% increased damage up to 15% for 5 seconds. Any kind of Blood Orb pickup. So that means every time I pick up a Blood Orb, it's 5 and up to 30%. So we'll just have to pick up 6 Blood Orbs to get a 30% damage boost. And essentially every further Blood Orb pickup will just keep this up. So once I've picked up 6, the 7th is still 30. The 8th is still 30. So as long as I pick up a Blood Orb every 5 seconds, I have another 30% continuous boost. Which means if I can somehow get the aspect of the Embalmer into a minion build, where consuming corpses has a 30% chance to spawn Blood Orbs, you're saying there's a chance for another significant damage boost. Blood Drinker is also giving you more Fortify. The Desecration Glyph, where you stand and desecrate the ground, is now 20% damage boost. And the Gravekeeper Glyph, which gives you more damage as you summon more corpses, is 18%. That's quite incredible. And the Sacrificial aspect that boosts your sacrifice bonuses, by 25% is now 50. So we're talking about the chance to sacrifice our Bone Mages for 30% more damage multiplicative overpower damage. That then gets boosted by 60% because of our Memento Mori. So we're getting 30 times 1.6, essentially, bringing that up to 48%, and then another 1.5, because why would we not do that? So we get, instead of 30% damage increase, we're boosting up to a 72% damage increase just like that. And that goes for every bonus. So our 20% shadow damage is also 20% times 1.6 times 1.5. Ta-da! 48% increase. Oh yeah, and the essence generation we're getting bonus, or the maximum essence we're getting bonus. About we're 20 maximum essence, or we're just getting 30 maximum essence. Fantastic, isn't it? With the Shadow Mages, because you could just play the Sacrificial Glyph even if you're only rocking 1 sacrifice, or 2 sacrifices, in this case the Golem, because the Sacrificial Glyph boosts the Golem as well. I mean 35% crit damage, or another 50% on top. That finally makes this aspect absolutely insane. And the best part is that Shielding Storm, which was used to actually create Barrier for you, used to scale off min life, base life. That was kind of stupid, but now it scales off max life. So getting 6% of your maximum life as Barrier, or 6% of your minimal life as Barrier, makes really sense if I have 60,000 life. I'm getting so much Barrier soak up, so it can finally be an absolute undying calamity. Again, finally, after all this time. For Rogue, Twisting Blade and Flurry is getting a damage increase. Then our passives are getting an overhaul to have even more damage reduction from 12 to 18%. And my Rogue was already nicely damage reducing. Oh, and when entering stealth and every second while stealth, you heal for 5, 10, 15% of your max life. That's incredible. I love it. Which brings us to the Paragon board, and there's just straight up a 10% damage boost to non-basic and non-core skills. Won't complain about that. Damage reduction on the explosive glyphs increased to 15%, even more survivability, and diminish is also another 5% damage reduction increase. Staying alive will be easier than ever, especially since they have been tinkering with pit bosses as well. If you're a grenade player, we have the initiative and the aspect of surprise going up by 50 and 200%. Blade Dancer just straight up another 20% multiplicative boost. The Trickster aspect has another grenade damage boost, and Shrouding is now down to 2 seconds instead of 3 seconds standing still for Dark Shroud. And the Umbrus doesn't actually need you anymore to hit with marksman skills to get your free Dark Shrouds. No, it's now lucky hit critical strike chance, just like that has the free chance to give you Dark Shroud. So you can finally play Umbrus with whatever, not only with marksman skills anymore, and that's insane. Aerostorm is stronger than ever, and for the Sorcerer, they're immortal anyways, but Ice Armor, Barrier amount increased from 30% of base life to 25% of max life. That doesn't matter that much because most Sorcs are running around with very few HP anyways, but maybe there's a reason finally to bump up your HP as a Sorc and not be like a 10, 12,000 HP Sorcerer, especially if you're not looking to essentially go Infinite Flame Shield and rather just boost your max life a jiffy bit and then just play Ice Armor super cooldown. My favorite change is a huge damage reduction. Why? Glass Cannon. That's the passive that gives you a huge amount of more damage while you're taking more damage too. But instead of taking 3, 6, 9% more damage, you take 2, 4, 6% more damage. That's significant, especially if you put more points in Glass Cannon now. The gain is only 2% per point and not 3% per point. And I love to see that. All in all, Verse Mastery on the key passive side is getting stronger than ever because bonus damage is now 15 to 20% and bonus damage after critical strike increased from 20 to 25%. And Verse Mastery is still bugged, or used to be bugged, and works actually for every element instead of just lightning, which means you're just getting stronger per se. Talking about Verse Mastery, the Mage Lord aspect used to give you 6 to 9% damage reduction for each close enemy up to 27%. That is now 9% damage reduction, tripled while fighting a close enemy. What? Super efficient versus bosses now. Even better than Harlequin Crest as you're playing Verse Mastery enemies. Might as well just forget about Harlequin Crest at this point. And all the unique items for Sorc, Flamescar, Asadoras, Staff of Endless Rage, Gloves of the Illuminator, just buff. Straight throughout the board. Damage boosts. And now to the endgame changes, and they're just like this little paragraph, but they mean so much. Health and damage levels have been reduced in the pit. The adjustment is most significant as players approach tier 60, so more players can fully participate in masterworking. The idea is basically that everyone is now able to at least reach pit 61, because it would kind of be sad if you can't get Neathiron. Also, all tormented bosses have had their health reduced by 30%. Unnecessary, I find personally. That being said, it will now be easier than ever to actually kill them, and it won't be just such a slog contest anymore. Especially this allows the good builds that could burst them anyways, burst them even harder, but the bad builds that were barely able to do this, they can now finally do it more reliable. And I think that's the real interesting part, in my opinion, that you're not forced to play the absolute ultra meta builds. No, you can play some off meta builds and still be able to do the Varise challenges. Now, the interesting part is that these changes will force me to rethink every single Paragon board because of the stat requirement change, and that will be overhauled in the next coming days. And we'll have a whole video coming on the Necromancer as well. Which class are you now going to play with the changes? I mean, we got a new Barb for you. We have a Sorc, or rather a Necro on top of me. Everything is available. Enjoy all these different absolutely S-tier super bangers. Thank you very much for being with me. Have a great day.